Hello and welcome to another episode of Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. If you are new to my show, I am a galactic walk-in. What that means is that I am not the original inhabitant of this physical form. I came into this physical form through a hyperdimensional portal that I created and named the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a type of interdimensional hyper-torus. What cube is to tesseract, torus is to Flying Rainbow Lasagne. And it is a shape that melds seamlessly the interior space and the exterior space. In doing so, it resolves duality. We must talk about duality. We must say, where did this come from? Why does it exist? And how has it limited and hobbled human consciousness for thousands of years? Well, it arises largely from biological structure, namely you have two eyes and you see the world through binocular vision, and it is the calculation of the subtle differences between the positions and information coming from the two eyeballs by your brain and your system of perception that is what gives you your view of reality. So your view of reality has been defined by binocular vision. You've got two eyeballs. However, you also have, or most people have, another organ of perception, which is one's third eye. In most of the population, this is latent. Imagine if you were born with a particular muscle, or imagine if, even though you were born with legs that function correctly, if you were encouraged to always sit and everyone in the world that you lived in got around by motorized wheelchair. Eventually, first of all, you would never learn to crawl, you would never learn to walk, you would never learn to run, and the muscles that would be developing don't develop and in fact atrophy. So, and imagine living in a population of people like that. This is a cute aside to the movie WALL-E, where it is a future cautionary tale of people who end up being incapacitated and only living in giant barca loungers and becoming huge, slothful, kind of beasts. But anyway, the analogy holds. You live in a world where most people have a latent psychic sense, where the pineal gland has not been cultivated. So you have not, to use the allegory, learned to crawl and learned to walk and learned to run and then built your muscles of your pineal gland. Instead, you have been forced to sit in a high chair or, not utilize your pineal gland. Aspects of it have been reduced to latency through fluoride and other chemicals, and also, most crucial, the electromagnetic fields, or let's say the subtle energetic fields within which we exist as people in an industrialized, technology-based world, those subtle energetic fields are often antithetical to the proper functioning of one's pineal gland. Yes, amazeballs, right. So, anyway, when the pineal gland becomes awakened, and this would be a process similar to if you had lived your whole life in a wheelchair, how do you even learn to walk? Well, first of all, you have to do gentle exercises to build the muscles and stretch atrophied tendons, and then you can't support yourself fully at first. You'd have to go in tiny incremental steps and have a type of exercise program. Same thing with your pineal gland. Let's say you have a totally closed down, some people call it calcified pineal gland. I know I'm a lot on the pineal gland here. To describe its functioning, it is like a eyeball that does not have a lens or a cornea or an aperture through which light can enter into it. But it does have retinal cells, and it does have a nerve that attaches it to the rest of the brain and system of perception. And, the way that it functions, the pineal gland functions, is very similar to the way that an old crystal-based radio apparatus worked. most apparatuses now for catching FM waves, they're digital radios, but there used to be crystal radio sets that had an actual little tiny piece of vibrating quartz crystal at the center of it. Well, inside of your pineal gland, you have nanocrystals. They're crystals that are so small they would be considered like only a few molecules put together. And yet their crystalline structure is essential to the proper functioning of the gland, which is both to send and receive messages, just like an antenna, to perceive, to receive, and to transmit. And you can imagine how if you had a beautiful crystal, if it started to get growths on it of other minerals, such as fluoride or calcium, that would reduce the capacity of those little crystals to vibrate clearly. So this is what many people talk about when they say that their pineal glands are calcified or that they need to be cleaned out. And it is very true that fluoride and Prozac is, I want to say fluoxetine, similar to that. It is a derivative of fluoride. Fluoride absolutely closes down your third eye. It has some interesting biological effects at the subcellular level also in inhibiting the correct functioning of ATP, adenine triphosphate. This is the chemical mechanism that essentially allows for movement. ATP is essential for, let's say, if you're a sprinter and you want your muscles to have explosive, release of energy so that you can run. Having enough ATP is absolutely necessary for that. What it has been noted is that people who are exposed to excessive fluoride, their ATP doesn't function properly in their cells. And what this leads to is a deep lethargy. People see that something isn't right, but they do not have the energy to act upon it. Literally, they can't lift a finger to change it. And fluoride was used for this purpose in World War II, to pacify prisoners of war. So if you are already familiar with this, that's wonderful, and I don't need to rehash because I'm sure that there are many people who do great work and who speak about this. I'm speaking about it today because of its connection to the third eye. And the point that I've been making is that you have duality because of your binocular vision. If you activate and revivify your third eye, you will no longer have binocular vision. You will now be seeing from a higher perspective. Not only the perspective of having two flesh eyes, but also you could say it's a higher dimensional perspective of being able to see beyond linear time. And that creates a difference in your belief system of perception, and interpretation of reality. It's literally giving you a third option. And with duality, the real limitation of the mindset is that you think there's only two options, either or. Let me get into binary. Binary is an amazing invention. It's a system of either describing any number or any piece of information using only zeros and ones. And this is the idea that a switch or an electron or a something can be either on or off, right? So this entire system of communication was created using only the numerical values of 0 or 1. Nothingness or somethingness. The way that we get beyond duality is by understanding that even though the numbers are number 0 and number 1, what we really have are two options. The binary system uses 0 and 1 to describe a world that actually has more than just 0 or 1 option. Our world has many, many options. Our world has a multiplicity of options. Our world has options that are decimal places. They're not just whole integers. We have options like 1.5 and 1.75. So this is beginning to chip away at the veneer of duality. Veneer, like a plastering of a distortive filter that has been placed on your ability to perceive. And the duality is tied to perception, it's tied to the biological container. And the flying rainbow lasagna is the solution to duality. So, as I was saying, you have number 0, which means I'm describing no thing. And I have number 1, which is describing one thing. If you were a being who only had those vocabulary words to work with, you would be able to say, I can only describe something that doesn't exist or something that does exist, but I cannot describe something that exists in many forms, like more of one, like there would only be able to be one pen or one cup of water. The magic happens when we understand that 0 and 1 are 2 options. So we now have invented the number 2. But wait, Aurora, I thought you said there's only 0, nothingness, or somethingness. And I am agreeing with you that there are indeed 2 options, nothingness and somethingness. So we've just invented the number 2. And just like in my episode where I described building the layers of dimensions by creating a new dimension at perpendicular angles to the previous dimension, so too here am I speaking about the same concept. Basically, once you make the cognitive leap from number 1 to number 2, it's not that hard to add another 1 and then get number 3, and then you can continue onward indefinitely. So those first cognitive leaps are always the most challenging aspect of creating a pattern. I call them the little ant moment because in my teachings I often use a little ant as an analogy, that like you're like a little ant walking on a flat piece of paper. And that's like you walking on the surface of time. And the little ant doesn't have wings and doesn't have the capacity to jump up, an inch into the air and jump off the surface of that paper. What we end up doing is folding the edges of the piece of paper so that the little ant can just go directly from one edge to the other edge and not have to go across the intervening space. So you know something? Once you have that little ant moment, you're like, wait a minute, I can fold the paper and I don't have to walk across that whole area. Then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to say, I can do it twice. I can do it 3 times. I can do it 4 times. I can do it as many times as I need to. Okay. This is all talking about moving beyond duality. And my intention for this particular broadcast is I am here to help heal some of the erroneous and really unhealthy misconceptions about Christ and Christ consciousness and how that relates to the Christian religion. For about the past 2,000 years, we have been suffering, or Earth life has been suffering due to the programmed duality. And what I'm talking about here is the idea of Christ and Antichrist. So, first of all, I would like to give you and clarify my definition of what Christ consciousness is, and then I'll do a little compare and contrast with how Christ is portrayed, how I feel in a very distorted way. My understanding is that Christ is a galactic being, like in the same way that you are the totality of consciousness. When you add up all of the parts of your body, your feet plus your knees plus your hips plus your belly plus your arms and your legs and everything that's going on in your brain all adds up to the totality of you. I would say that everything that is going on all of the stars and all of the planets and all of the comets and all of the asteroids and everything that is going on in this galaxy is what adds up to Christ. Christ is the being that we are all living within. And just as each one of our cells of our physical cellular body has its own consciousness and its own sovereignty, so too do you, as an individuated cell within this enormous galactic body of Christ, have your own sense of individuality and your own sense of sovereignty. And it is really only the limitations of the human nervous system, the limitations of how large you can perceive and how long you can keep a thought going, that makes it not possible to speak with the larger entity, because the larger galactic entity is living over a very, very long time span, and it might be difficult for you to connect and perceive of it because of its large size and slow movement. So if Christ consciousness is having a thought that might take 13 billion years, and we only live 100 years, we might only be catching a tiny little syllable of that thought, thereby making it very difficult to perceive what the total communication was. Okay, so that is my understanding, that not only am I Christ, but that each one of you is also Christ. You all have consciousness. Any place there is consciousness, that is Christ. And when I look around, I see consciousness everywhere, because I certainly see it in the world like the plant kingdom. I see it in the insect world. I see it in, of course, all of the beautiful wild animals. I see intelligence in domestic animals. I see intelligence in water. I see intelligence in bacteria, and I even see intelligence on an atomic level. Or let's say I see consciousness and awareness being exhibited on an atomic level and a quantum level. I say, Aurora, what do you mean atomic and quantum level? What I'm saying is that consciousness and our ability to perceive and observe and be aware of something affects molecules and atoms and subatomic particles. And there's tons of great literature in the scientific realm about this. If you're interested, you can read about the double slit experiment, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and Schrödinger's cat. These are some thought experiments that describe very well the idea that your viewpoint is affecting reality. Your consciousness is affecting physical matter. Your consciousness is at play in the creation of events. You have consciousness within you, and you are surrounded by consciousness. And it is my understanding that that is the purpose for this whole beautiful system. Consciousness exploring itself within the realm of consciousness. And that's really wonderful. That's how it's supposed to be. However, there have been some distortions of the information that emanates from this galactic being and is perceived through the third eye by humanity. And these distortions have been programmed into humanity's filter of perception on the genetic level, the level of the belief system, on a biological level, and religion has been used as a tool to program in a lot of the false dualistic notions. Now, so first I have established, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Yes, everyone, there is a true Christ. I really would not ever tell you something that doesn't exist. I wouldn't tell you that something is if it isn't. I wouldn't tell you that something exists if it doesn't. I'm a very responsible bringer of information, and I will tell you that, yes, Christ consciousness is a real being that really exists. And the human perception of what Christ is has been, I want to say, tragically distorted. Not just distorted a little bit, not just like, if you drop your sandwich on the ground and it just gets a little bit mushed. We're talking like seriously mushed, seriously degraded. If the consciousness of galactic Christ is like nutrition, then what has reached humanity has been so degraded that it can no longer be even called nutrition. I would liken it more to poison or food that has become so rotten that it would cause illness if you ingested it. And so I understand why many people reject the premise of Christ and the premise of religion. And I'll also tell you that one of the changes of human perception that I am here to help foster is no longer looking to an external authority figure. That's the old age. We are coming out of the age of Pisces. This is not only an astrological age, this is also an era of consciousness. So during the time that Jesus was in Judea, up until the present point, like roughly the year 2000, past 2,000 years or so, we were in the age of Pisces. And in that age, you say, Mommy, Daddy, Jesus, Obama, somebody out there, tell me what to do. It's the age of having an authority figure. And it is coincident with energy rising up the spine, or the Kundalini energy, when it rises, getting to the point of activating the third eye. When you begin to raise your Kundalini and you activate your third eye, all sorts of amazing, wonderful things start to happen, but it's not the end of the journey. And it's easy to be misguided and waylaid on the final transition by the idea that you have achieved divinity. Premature divinity, let's call it that. You have prematurely declared yourself divine, because there's still another little leg of the journey that is necessary, and that is reaching the crown chakra. And the crown chakra has an interplay with the brow chakra, and I will post some beautiful pictures of this too, that these two chakras interact much like gyroscopes, or much like the helicopter blades and rotor of a regular helicopter, that they are spinning at perpendicular directions, and in so doing, they stabilize the flight of the vehicle. So when the Christ chakra, or the brow, indigo chakra, is in divine harmonious alignment with the crown chakra, which, by the way, has as its energetic signature a female presence. So Christ, the male presence, is the brow chakra, and the crown has a female presence, and it is the romance or interplay between those two that truly causes the divine consciousness to be born. So for someone to simply raise their Kundalini to the level of the pineal gland and activate it and experience some of the amazing psychic faculties that wake up, it is possible to prematurely declare yourself God or divine, because you still have to connect to higher consciousness through the crown chakra. So historically, when I describe the time of history, the year zero, counting in the, it's amazing that our calendar system was even created to reflect that we are living within the dream of Jesus, that if we are beginning with the year zero and up into the year 2000, that period of time has been analogous to a seeker or a person who is cultivating their Kundalini, raising it to the level of the brow chakra, but not yet having activated their crown. And the religious awakening that came out of that era was distorted in the same way that when individuals begin to awaken their psychic faculties, they sometimes have a distortion, and they do not understand that, yes, you are God, you are divine, and because that's absolutely a true statement. And the second part, or the rejoinder to that statement, is, and so is everyone else. So you can understand, there are people who have faced the mental illness of having a Messiah complex, which just means that they only read the first half of the sentence. You are God. You are Christ. That is absolutely accurate. But then they stopped. They didn't keep on reading. And the rest of that sentence is P.S. and ... and so is everyone else. However, clearly we can say that some beings do not exhibit what we would define as unconditionally loving behavior, or behavior that properly reflects the values that we would identify as Christ. So, I'm thinking about someone who might work in an abattoir, killing animals horribly, not a humane slaughterer of animals, but someone who just, horribly kills animals, or I want to say someone who is in a war. How about a professional mercenary? How about a person who is paid to kill other people? With no judgment, I actually have interacted with someone who was a professional sniper, first in the military and then in a type of Blackwater secret private corporation, and he personally shot from far away over 100 individual people who were not threatening him at all. It was purely a mercenary existence. I would say that is the antithesis of Christ-like behavior. So we can say on the surface of this planet, there are certainly people who have behavior that is not Christ-like, yet we are all Christ. How can we understand this? So first of all, we must understand that Christ is awareness. It's like saying that, Your eyes are open and you can see and perceive. So there are varying degrees of awareness or eyes being open. A person's eyes can be open a tiny little fragment. They might be 3% Christ. They have 3% awareness, and it also means that they have a huge unconscious dark side. 97% of themselves they don't know about, don't know what they're doing with, and when you have an unconscious dark side, it's like having limbs that you are not connected to. They stomp on all sorts of things. They hit people, punch people, do all sorts of naughty, naughty things. And they do that because you're not connected to them. All right? Then let's do the opposite. Let's say a person who is 100% aware, a person whose eyes are 100% open. Those people also exist on the face of the planet. They are 100% pure conduits or effective transmitters of their information, of their daily experience. So it's like saying the signal of their cell phone or the signal of their broadcast is 100% accurate. Everything that they send out is properly received, and everything that they receive accurately. There's no distortion, there's no loss, there's no friction, there's no misinterpretation. It is like a frictionless perpetual motion machine, rather. And of course, we're very lucky that there are some beings that exist like that, because they certainly help, raise the averages, the overall batting averages here. And most people are somewhere in the middle of those two capacities. Most people occupy the spectrum of Christliness, somewhere between 1% and 100%. So that means that most people exist aware of themselves to a certain percentage, but not the totality. And what that means is that you know about yourself, you see aspects of yourself clearly, but you still have a blind side or an unconscious dark side. And when I talk about Antichrist, with no judgment, what we are talking about is unconsciousness, lack of awareness, darkness. When I say darkness, people want to interpret that as bad naughtiness. However, we can interpret it differently. We can interpret darkness as a place that has not yet received energy. Light is energy. Light is information. Consciousness is analogous to light. An area that is dark has not yet received consciousness. And consciousness can itself be a transformative, we could call it force or substance or wave or whatever. Consciousness transforms what it touches. That's what I spoke about not that long ago in talking about science, and the idea is that your consciousness is affecting reality. So consciousness affects reality. Now I'd like to talk about what I would term the astral plane, but I don't want to be misinterpreted. One moment. Our pineal glands are what we use to create reality. They are analogous to the paintbrush that an artist uses to paint a painting, to paint an image. Literally, when you envision or imagine something, an event, a person, a picture, a purple banana, you are using the paintbrush of your pineal gland and your third eye to paint that picture. And we use this capacity to project reality and then to experience reality. It is possible to make thought constructs with one's mind. And this goes to when you begin to awaken your pineal gland, when you begin to put energy into that aspect of your non-physical anatomy and find out the power of those higher faculties. So let's have an example. Madame Blavatsky, the inceptor of Theosophy, a woman who traveled extensively in the Far East, and this is hundreds of years ago, and learned a lot of the information that was being guarded by the secret mystery schools of the far, far East. And one of the things that she learned about was how to make like a little, I want to say astral, a character or creature created out of her pure thought forms. a character that was created by nothing more than her, and I'm not using the word mind, because when I say mind, I am usually referring to the hacked operating system that is the human mind that is evident in verbalized conscious thought. I'm not talking about that mind. I'm talking about the non-verbal, higher consciousness system of perception that is awakened through the third eye, that she was able to utilize these ancient techniques to create a little false monk, this little monk-like figure. And she put energy into it. She envisioned it like an imaginary friend, because truly our pineal gland is the seat of our imagination. So she imagined this being and imagined it so vividly and put so much of her energy into it that eventually it took on a life of its own and started to behave on its own, not just merely under her direction. It became somewhat self-aware and self-motivated. And this is one of the caveats, when we begin to awaken our faculties, what do we do with them? What do we paint with our paintbrushes? And we must take responsibility for what we make with our paintbrushes. Or the analogy, the sorcerer's apprentice, he sneaks into the magic room and creates endless buckets and mops, but of course doesn't have the off button. It's important to have the off button for one's creations. So now I'd like to talk about Jesus Christ as an astral or projected, a creature who is made out of projected thought forms. There was indeed a historical figure who lived about 2,000 years ago in Judea, whose name was Yeshua, and this being was a physical container for galactic Christ consciousness. When galactic Christ consciousness comes into a physical container, it causes changes. It causes changes on a cellular level because the cells must vibrate at a higher rate in order to be able to contain higher consciousness. That's like saying that your computer has to process more information, at a higher rate in order to work with these higher energies. So you have to upgrade your RAM, you have to upgrade your chips inside. So of course the physical biological container of Jesus was modified to be able to contain the consciousness of Christ. However, Christ exists in a tree, Christ exists in a bird, Christ exists in the face of the sun. And one of the most destructive things that has come out of the Christian religion has been the envisioning of Christ consciousness within the container of a two-armed, two-legged, bearded man. I say destructive because I'm not talking about the ideals that were embodied by that humanoid form. I'm talking about the idea that that person will be the person that comes back and fixes the planet. Okay? There's a lot here about people in this time and place have been very much programmed by the Judeo-Christian realm. Even if you are not a practicing Jew or Christian or Muslim, the holy books and the Book of Revelations in particular have really affected people's perception of reality and their expectations of what is going to happen. So for example, even if you aren't a Christian or a Jew, you still believe in the end of the world. And even if you don't really believe in the end of the world, you've seen a lot of apocalyptic movies that are all about tidal waves crushing New York or crushing the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever amount of destruction you need to see. This is also about programming for the expectation of a Messiah to come and save oneself. So when I say unhealthy or destructive aspects of Christianity that I would like to heal and put to rest, that is one of them. First of all, it is very disempowering to put all of your energy and capabilities in the hands of someone else, an external authority figure. And that is what the Christian religion asks its participants to do. It asks that you place all of your decision-making and values and capacity for doing anything in the hands of an external authority figure called the Lord, whom you then ask for guidance and permission to do what you would like to do. And I mean, we can go in all different directions after that statement. Yes, of course, many people have used the concept that the Lord told them to do things in order to justify and excuse many horrific actions. Think the Inquisition. But I'm really wanting to go more into a different direction here. This is the idea that just as Madame Blavatsky put energy into her little fake created figure, so too does the Christian religion ask its participants to put energy into a false construct that is called Jesus Christ. This false construct has had so much energy put into it that it has taken on a life of its own. So what we have now is actually not duality. We now have more like three things going on. We have the primary ray, Christ consciousness. That's like the fundamental note. That's the original thing that exists. And we have its opposite. If we have light, then we have the opposite of light, which would be lack of light or darkness, okay? But then darkness created, or lack of awareness created, this false form of what Christ is supposed to be, called Jesus Christ. And there are a lot of pictures of this being. A lot of people pray to this being. And here's what I'm trying to get to. I recently went to a rather progressive church here in Northern California where I live. I was invited there by some young people that I met, and I, always accept invitations from the universe. It seemed like a very positive thing. And I went to one of these let's say, more forward-thinking church services where people played rock music and wrote, sang songs that were praiseful songs of their own writings, not necessarily traditional hymns. They did not read from the Bible, and most of the service it reminded me of a rock concert because people, and mostly it was young people there, were there to dance, and there was interpretive dance, and to perform, and to listen to music, and to sing along or clap along. And I noticed people really were there for the positive feeling of it. And there's no judgment in this, but I'll tell you that it's masturbatory. It's not having a true exchange of energy. It's not true partnership. That form of worship is literally your energy, the energy of the worshipers is being harvested and fed to a false intermediary. Instead of that energy of unconditional love and, Christ awareness going directly back to Christ from the worshiper, that they are putting their food, like when you are giving out love and energy and appreciation, like if you were in church and you were saying to Jesus Christ, hanging on a cross with incense burning underneath him, like, thank you so much for suffering for my sins, and, really going through the dogma and really believing in it. Your gratefulness, your gratitude is real. Your love is real. It's a type of food that we give off for higher dimensional beings. But it is being given off under false pretenses. The person that you are giving that love to, the story of who they are, is a falsehood. And you have been given a falsehood intentionally so that you will direct the food of your unconditional love from your heart to this astral presence, to this false, created, almost like a stand-in for true Christ consciousness. Yes, on the one hand, it can be difficult to love and accept consciousness in its abstract form. To just love a ball of light, or just love something that's shaped like a crystal or a snowflake. And I will post a picture of my painting that is called The True Face of Christ, and that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a crystalline diamond snowflake. And that's what I saw in my experience. It can be difficult for people to understand Christ as an abstraction, and there's a great desire as a human to see Christ and to see God in the same form that you are, so that you can imagine that you are also worthy. I want you to know that you are worthy. I want you to know that God and Christ also exist in every single form. So there's definitely Christ that is shaped like a man with 2 arms and 2 legs. There's also Christ that's shaped like a blue whale. And there's Christ that is shaped like a redwood tree. And there's Christ that is shaped like a planaria. This is very important. I mean, if we could understand that and embody that on a deep level, then perforce life on earth would improve immeasurably, because you wouldn't be torturing or killing or starving or mutilating other aspects of Christ. If you are Christ, you wouldn't be mutilating other aspects of Christ. And now I'm thinking of my example of like a person who works in the abattoir. Like, why would you do that to Christ if you yourself are Christ? And I've also spoken about my understanding that Christ is still on the cross, that Yeshua is still in the process of being crucified and going through the death process, and that our fractal microcosmic experience of the past 2,000 years has been elements within his own psyche coming to know itself. That each one of us is a character within the passion play of Christ coming to know itself. And this is true. We are all characters within the dream of Christ. I'm speaking today, though, about the difficulty of what is true Christ versus, and every time I use the word versus, I realize that I'm just enforcing duality, not true Christ. So true Christ is this galactic being. This true Christ is comprised of pure unconditional love. That is an energetic tone. So it's like saying you're made of chocolate. You cannot be made of bacon if you are made of chocolate, all right? So if we say that Christ consciousness is made of love, that's like saying that it is made of a substance of a particular vibration. And we cannot say that it is made of anything else. And yet we can definitely see that the false Christ that has been prayed to and that has been distorted by the teachings of the Christian church has evidenced both ideas and behaviors that would be defined as not unconditionally loving. And when I say this, what do I mean? Unconditionally loving behavior means I accept you totally and fully. I do not have to change you in order to love you. I accept you as you are. Well, clearly, the homophobic, literalist, biblical literalist Christian church does not accept people who are gay. That's totally antithetical to unconditional love. So the people who attend that church give their non-physical energy to a non-physical being that is not true Christ. They harvest their energy, or their energy is harvested during Sunday worship and fed to a being that is not true Christ. And just like Madame Blavatsky's little monk started to develop a mind of its own and its own personal agenda, so too has false Christ, its own sense of self and its own sense of self-preservation and its own agenda. So we have true Christ, we have Antichrist, and we have false Christ. We have 3 things going on here, and we actually have much more than that. I know. So what am I talking about here? I'm just taking a little drink. I am talking about the planetary and galactic revolution of consciousness that is happening right now. I don't know if you're aware that it is happening. Many people are, especially people who tend to listen to radio shows like this. There is a revolution of consciousness that is happening right now. And people are choosing not to feed the false, we could call it ego Christ. Let's think about this. When I was in that church and the worshipers were jumping up and down and singing Christ's praises, well, not Christ's praises, they were singing Jesus's praises. They were saying, Jesus is so cool. They were almost treating him like a type of rock star. It was like a type of idolization. Like, he's so cool. He's my friend. I love to be him. I'd love to be near him. I love that he thinks I'm special. All of these types of things. And I understand that people can worship according to their own capacity. Like, even if you don't have a clear concept of God or Christ and you're a little distorted, as long as you're a good person, you're worshiping, it's okay. Not so true. Not so true. It's really important to give an accurate description of who this is and what this is. And the point that I'm trying to make here, and forgive me if I am not as fluid in my speaking as I usually try to be with stringing together these points and these concepts. The idea is that some people are unwittingly upholding a very destructive thought construct. And the destructive thought construct is really that you yourself are not divine and that you yourself are not powerful. What I take issue with the way that Christ is worshipped by some people, is that one must totally abrogate one's own desires or sublimate one's own desires in deference to Christ. And I do not believe that. For example, if you really want to be a musician, or if you really want to be, a painter, but you feel like, no, in order to serve Christ, I'm really supposed to be a missionary and go to a country where they don't speak English and teach people there to speak English. Something that is not the best way to serve Christ. And I will tell you that each of our innate desires, even if you are an ego, even if you have an ego and you're in a body, your desires serve a higher purpose. And especially when they are desires like, I'd like to be creative, I'd like to be a musician or an artist, or that is how you serve, by expressing your authentic connection to source through dance or music or art or whatever. You do not have to serve Christ through rejecting personal income and I want to say forcing a belief system, but let's say instead plastering a belief system on top of unwilling or semi-willing participants. So one of the first things is Christian religion says, give up all your own power, give it all over to the Lord, and then the Lord can tell you what to do. That is false Christ. Please don't do it. You have your own innate divine connection to source. Even if you are like one of the people who has been born into a world where everyone's in a wheelchair and you never activated your pineal gland, you still have your own innate divine connection to source. And it is not necessary for you to give over your power to someone else. Mama, Dada, Jesus, Obama. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to be a good person. Tell me what I should be doing, thinking, eating, drinking, saying. That is slavery. That is antithetical to freedom. And true Christ wants your consciousness to be free. I'm also here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna in order to help your consciousness be free. I will speak in another recording about my role here, because I act as not only a conduit of energy, I'm like a bridge of energy that allows us to get around certain roadblocks or genetic degradations. I am also like an amplifier that allows you to increase the signal-to-noise ratio. So in the communications from true Christ consciousness or hyperspace beings or galactic consciousness, there is a signal-to-noise ratio. How much of the information that you are receiving is truth, and how much of it is distortion, either intentional or unintentional. So we, in our divine connection, would like to have 100% signal and 0% noise. However, unfortunately, there's genetic degradation, and there's the systemic oppression of humanity on Earth that has literally made the signal-to-noise ratio more like 1% true Christ consciousness, 99% garbage. I am sorry to tell you this. I do not take joy in telling you like how screwed up the situation is. I am here to empower you through information. And when I say that my presence helps to increase the signal to noise ratio, what it means is that I am here as an amplifier for truth. I am here to make the things that are in alignment with divine consciousness stand out in the pattern of either noise or words or whatever, that truth will stand out, and that the things that aren't true will be more apparently false, so that it is easier to make these distinctions. However, I, as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, do not bully you. I do not tell you you have to choose this instead of that. I'm just shining the light a little brighter so that you can see what you're actually choosing. So in this description today, I have really described what I see as a very destructive, harmful belief system that talks about Christ but does not actually embody its principles. And I am here to give a new idea that the best way to show that you value Christ, like if you love Christ and if you want to be good, quote unquote, that the way to do that is to be true to one's own interior divine connection. Please do not base your ethics and your morals on what your government tells you. Guess what? The government just released a torture report. It says that it's okay to torture people. Please do not base your morals on your government. Please do not base your morals on some external teacher. Please don't base them on what I am saying to you. I am saying to you, dust up your own divine connection. Connect to the source and get past the false Christ that has been placed in front of you and connect to true Christ consciousness. So, I don't know, I know this person, she's not on earth anymore, but she tells me a story. When she was a little kid, her mom was all into health food and she never fed them chocolate. She only fed them carob and told them that it was chocolate. And oh my, when my little friend, when she was 5 years old, went to her friend's birthday party and found out what real chocolate tasted like, and how very disappointed she was when she went home to her mom and said, "Hey Mom, I've had real chocolate, and you know something? It's not that." Well, that is what many people have been experiencing with Christ and with Jesus. People have been fed a false version of what Christ consciousness is, a carob version. And when you taste true Christ consciousness, you will see how all imposters fall by the wayside. This is also preparation for, some people are concerned about distortive false messiahs coming, like beings from another planet or holograms coming out of another world saying, "I am Christ, I've returned to save you all. I'm Quetzalcoatl, I've returned to save you all. Worship me now." I will tell you, of course, people plan to do things like that. Yes, but, and please do not be concerned, because you have an inner sense, and your inner sense can tell truth from fiction. Your inner sense can delineate between carob and real chocolate. And it is not possible to impersonate true Christ in a believable manner. You can feel it. You can feel the falseness of it. So when we are here right now, our job is to tune our antenna and be discerning in what we perceive. Does this sound unconditionally loving? Does this not sound unconditionally loving? And when we each have a choice about who we align with, basically what hyperspace beings you interact with. Yes, I am talking about contact. Boy, oh boy, the whole point of this show, birth of a new dimension. We are birthing a new dimension. The new dimension will be inhabited by people who live on the surface of Earth and people who don't live on the surface of Earth. Or maybe people who used to live somewhere else and now live on the surface of Earth. Yes, we are coming together with beings from many different places and many different cultures. So need to expand the definition of what is God, expand the definition of what is Christ, and also be extremely discerning in one's own perception. Don't take anything less than unconditional love. If any being speaks to you in phrases or tones or with concepts that are not unconditionally loving, please reject them. And unconditional love means I accept you for exactly who and what you are. I don't require you to change. You can be exactly who and what you are. Based on that, it is essential for us to attempt unconditional love, and that is where we accept events and people for their basic nature and for what they are, and also understanding that unconditional love is like a universal solvent, and it does change people. You know something? But I don't love them so that they will change, but I love them knowing that being loved is a transformative experience. So what do you do with Astral Christ? What do you do with the fake thought form construct that has been fed for 2,000 years with people worshiping a false idol? What you do is you use the universal solvent. You love it. When you meet and interact with that patriarchal, condescending, external authority figure that wants to take away your freedom and your latitude, it is necessary to be loving towards it and to remind it that it is not acting like true Christ. So, am I an apostate? Am I someone here simply saying, go away from the church, don't worship? Am I telling you to embrace the dark side? Worship Satan, embrace the dark side. Far from it, far from it. I am actually a voice of sanity, telling you that the Christian church as it currently stands is actually more like the church of the Antichrist. That when you worship the man with a beard and 2 arms and 2 legs who you think is going to come out of the sky to save you, you are giving your calories to an already bloated false deity. And that I invite you to put that deity on a diet, connect with Christ that is inside of you. Activate your pineal gland. How do we do this? Okay, first of all, stop ingesting fluoride. If you ingest it, please stop. Second of all, expose yourself to natural sunlight. And also, sit on or put your feet on the ground. These are basic concepts of beginning to clear out your pineal gland. I'll get more into how to clear it out on another broadcast. Thank you so much for tuning into Birth of a New Dimension. FlyingRainbowLasagne.com. Sign up for Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Semester begins in January 2015.